Hello, today I'm going to go over database creation for the West Virginia Senate problem. We're going to go through creating a new database, how to import tables and data in, how to create database tables, add records, how to create lookup fields, create relationships. Just a reminder, this assignment requires the Windows version of Microsoft Office, so you'll either need to have Windows and Access installed, or you'll need to be using the Mac virtual machine. You're going to want to download the database file from your instructor's website. And let's take a look. I've already done that. I've got the data files right here. I'm going to right click and choose to extract. I'm going to click extract and it opens up. You can see I've got files I'm going to import to create the actual database here. It's called data files on my desktop. So I'm going to close that. I'm going to click Open Access, and I want to click to create a blank database. I'm going to scroll down and make sure I name it the way that we've been asked to. It needs to be called Senate _PPDC _WVSP, and the ACCDB should be on there. I'll click Create. Notice it's saving it in my Documents file. All right. The first thing that I always advise folks to do is to get rid of Table 1. We're not going to work with it, and you don't need it. He asks us to import 3 XML files. XML files are very simple to import. You simply need to know where they are, and we're told to import the structure and the data into a new table. Let me go slowly for this first one, and then we'll go pick up speed. We're going to go to External Data, and you want to work over here under Import and Link. Do not work under the Export. You'll notice that XML is grayed out there. You do not want to export because we don't have any data. We're pulling data in. We want to go to Import and Link. So I'm going to go to New Data Source, From File, and pick XML. XML is a little bit like HTML. It's marked up plain text that tells the computer what to do when you import it. I believe I saved my file on the desktop, and I'm going to grab, let's see, he says to bring candidates in first. When I do that, I've got my path there. I click OK. I want to import the structure and data in, and he gave us no other instructions, so I simply hit Close. I'm going to double click, make sure everything came in. You can see, yes, it's there. Close that file up because we don't want to leave other files open. And then we just repeat the process. We're going to New Data Source, From File, XML. This time we're going to pull districts in. I like to import them in the order I'm told. We're going to bring in structure and data. And there are no other instructions, so we just import it. And again, I just double click, make sure it imported successfully, and close it. Do the final one, From File, Analysis Questions. There won't be any data in this. We're just bringing in the structure of the table. Structure and data. There's not going to be any data in it, but that's okay. You'll see it's empty because it's waiting for you to answer those questions. The next one is a little more complicated. It's the election CSV file. You'll notice that he has several sets of instructions here. We want to import it, called elections. The first row contains the field names. That means we're going to have to check a box. We need to specify the field types as indicated in step 1. Don't set a primary key, but afterwards create a composite key as indicated in step 1. So what I'm going to do here is go to New Data Source, and we want to pick text file to import the elections because CSV is a comma separated values file, and it's just text. So we browse, and you can see elections. We hit open. This is where we have to be a little bit careful. The first screen is we're going to indicate that the data is delimited. That means it's separated by something. In this case, it's a comma. We hit next. We tell it that it's separated by a comma. And the critical thing you want to remember here is to check the first row contains field names. He mentioned that in the instructions, and you want to make sure to check it. Otherwise, the field names don't get pulled in correctly. Then the next is to go through and make sure each field type is correctly formatted. In this case, it is. So we can hit next. We want to say no primary key because he says do not set primary key during the import, and afterwards set a composite key. So we'll hit finish. It's done. And let's scroll back to step 1 and look at what the composite key should be for elections CSV. It looks like district and year are part of the composite key. So the way we would do that would be to right-click, pick Design View, and we'd highlight district and year and click Primary Key. Close it back up, save our changes, and we're good. Let's scroll on down and see what else we need to do. We need to create database tables. So we're going to go to Create. We always want to use, table design. And we're going to create it just as specified. Don't freelance here. Party ABVRV with camel caps. That means the second, there's no space, and the first letter of the second word is capitalized. We're going to make it short text. Then we'll tab down, and party name is the second field. It's also short text. We're going to hit primary key for that. We're going to save it, and we're going to call it parties. And then I'll close it, and I'm going to double click to open it, and I will enter the data here. I'm going to enter a couple of lines, pause the video, enter the rest, so that you don't have to watch me enter the whole thing. So here, for example, I would enter AFP and American Freedom Party. I tab down, type in all caps the Constitution Party, and I would continue to work my way down. Before I pause the video to finish entering the data, the one thing I want to remind you is when you are working with a table with a primary key, you cannot leave the primary key empty, and you cannot put a duplicate in here. So for example, if I tried to enter con again for the Constitution Party, and once I try to move on to the next line, it would error out, or if I left this blank. It's important that you fill things in, and it's important that you fill them in accurately. Okay, I entered the rest of the records. I'm going to tab. That means all of my records are saved. I'm going to close the parties table up. The next thing on our punch list to do is to create lookup fields. We want to modify the candidates table to incorporate lookup fields. What lookup fields do are they ensure that data is entered correctly. If I ask all of you to enter a person's party affiliation, some of you may enter Democrat, some of you may enter Democratic Party, some of you may enter DEM as variants for the Democratic Party. The same would hold true of the Republican Party, and so on. So we do lookup fields to make sure we maintain the consistency of data. A person can only pick from a list, and therefore they would hopefully always pick the correct thing. So here's what we do. We are going to go into the candidates table in Design View. We're going to go to the party abbreviation, and we're going to change it, or we're going to pick Lookup Wizard. It will stay short text in the end. And then we just follow the instructions. He says, use a lookup field referencing the parties table. So we're going to get the values from another table. We're going to pick the parties table. And we're going to bring over both the abbreviation and the party name. We are going to sort the party name in ascending order so that it's easy to find things. We don't have to guess where stuff is. We're going to uncheck hide key column because that's what the instructions tell us. Then we are going to store the value of the party abbreviation, so that's what we're going to pick there. We want to enable data integrity, and we want to restrict deletes on the relationship created, and we don't have to enter anything else. We hit finish. We save it, Everything's good. Now, when we go to Datasheet View and we click here, you can see, especially if we widen this a little bit, that it would display a list of choices, both the abbreviation and the full name, and it's going to store the abbreviation for our queries. Now we're going to go back to Design View because we're asked to do one other thing. We're asked to modify the year field, do it as a lookup wizard, and we're going to type this list in ourselves. And we simply put the values in. Whoops. You have to be careful when you're doing this. You want to hit Tab. I hit Enter, and it took us on to the next screen. We'll hit Finish. And now, if you, whoops, I inadvertently tried to rename that year. We've got it back the way it's supposed to be. You always have to look around and make sure you haven't made a mistake. Access will jump you. Now, if I save this and I go back to my datasheet view, you can see that I have options to choose from, and we're in good shape there. So let's close that up. Now, we're going to look at creating relationships. It's not terribly hard, but what you need to do is you're going to get an instruction in your homework and on exam saying, please relate districts to elections. In this case, they tell you what the common fields are, so it's not terribly hard. And I'll walk through how I typically would do this. I'm looking to relate districts and elections, so I'm going to right-click and pick Show Table. It's going to come up over there. You all may have a floating show table. I'm going to double-click on districts to make it available. I'm going to double-click on elections to make that available. And what I like to do is move them off from the others, display so that I can see the whole thing, and then I look for the common fields. In this case, it's redistricting, cycle, and district. They're the primary keys here. So I am going to start from districts table. I drag redistricting, cycle, and drop it on top. Then I need to add that second field, which is district. I add it on both sides. And you'll notice something when I do that. It should actually allow us then to, let's see, do we have to enforce referential integrity? We do. We don't have to enable cascade updates or deletes. And we hit Create. And hit OK. In that case, we've got a problem. Okay, so let's continue. The issue that we ran into is I related them backwards, and what you want to do is make sure that you follow his hint to say you need to relate them in the order that they're requested. So I want to relate districts to elections. Districts is going to be the table, elections is going to be the related table. So I'm going to click on redistricting cycle and click drop it over there. Then I'm going to add district, and I am going to add district on this side, and you notice it changes to one-to-many. We can enforce the referential integrity, and it works. The important thing, as you saw, is if you pick the wrong order, if you do it incorrectly, it's going to remain many down here, many to many, and that's not what you want. So you click it, you see the relationship works correctly. Now I'll be a little bit more careful here with elections and candidates. I need to relate district and year. Elections is the table, so I am going to pick district, and I am going to drag and drop it to district on candidates. And you notice it's indeterminate. If I do this correctly and relate year in the elections table to year in the related table of candidates, it changes to one-to-many, and I can enforce referential integrity. You hit create. It's good. And that's where we wrap up. We don't need to answer the analysis questions here. We want to close the relationships window. We want to go to database tools and hit compact and repair. You can ignore any errors, close it, and then you should be able to submit it to your instructor. Please let your instructor know if you have any questions. Thank you very much.